Can you all see that, the altruistic motivation? Okay, very good. Thank you. So we recite this together. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. The Action Bodhicitta Prayer. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Short refuge prayer. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. The four immeasurables. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. So now we can take a couple minutes, center our mind on our mindfulness of the Bardo Thodol practices. Keep our back straight. You're sitting on the floor on a cushion, sitting with your legs crossed, your back straight, your hands 4 inches below your navel. You're sitting in a chair, your legs together, feet on the floor together, keeping your back straight. And take a deep breath and hold it. Exhale. Hold that vacant breath. Breathe in again through both nostrils, expanding the abdomen, holding the breath. Exhale through both nostrils, compressing the abdomen, forcing all the stale negative air out and holding your breath. One more time, breathe in very deeply. Hold it. Exhale very completely, squeezing all that stale negative air out and hold the breath. Relax, breathe normal. Just quiet your mind. You prefer to continue with the breathing, go right ahead. Okay, thank you. So does anybody have any questions or comments about anything that we've been talking about thus far? And okay. So to establish our mindfulness in the Bardo Thodol, we should recite the root verses, the 6 intermediate states on page 1. So Louisa, would you mind reading that on page 1 when we begin, please? And then Curtis, would you read the 10-branch prayer on page 7? And then I'll read the purification practice on page 14. So that will help us to establish our mindfulness. So Louisa, when you're ready on page 1, please go ahead.
Okay, is it root verses of the 6 intermediate states?
Yes.
Okay. According to this cycle of teachings, the circle of the birth and death can be seen as being composed of 6 intermediate states. These 6 intermediates, gotta get my glasses on here. These are the modalities of existence, our awakening, living state, dreaming meditation, the time of death, and the 2 successive phases of the after-death state are defined in the glossary. This poem emphasizes the centrally important perspective that relates to each of these states. It is recommended that practitioners should memorialize, kind of hard to read those small words, these verses and recite them repeatedly while reflecting on their meaning throughout their lives. I bow down to the conquerors, the peaceful and wrathful deities. Alas, now as the intermediate state of living arises before me, renouncing laziness for which there is no time in this life. I must enter the undistracted path of study, reflection, and meditation, taking perceptual experience and the nature of mind as the path. I must cultivate the actualization of 3 Buddha bodies. Now having obtained a precious human body this one time, I do not have the luxury of remaining on a distracted path. Alas, now as the intermediate state of dreams arises before me, renouncing the corpse-like insensitive sleep of delusion, I must enter free from distracting memories, the state of the abiding nature of reality, cultivating the experience of inner radiance through the recognition, emanation, and the transformation of dreams. I must not sleep like a beast, but cherish the experiential cultivation which mingles sleep with actual realization. Last, now when the intermediate state of meditative concentration arises before me, renouncing the mass of distractions and confusions, I must undistractedly enter a state which is devoid of subjective apprehension and free from the 2 extremes, and attain stability in the stages of generation and perfection. At this moment, having renounced activity, having attained a singular concentration, I must not fall under the way of bewildering mental afflictions. At last, now as the intermediate state of the time of death arises before me, renouncing all attachments, yearnings, and subjective apprehension in every respect, I must undistractedly enter the path on which the oral teachings are clearly understood, and eject my own awareness into the uncreated expanse of space. Immediately upon separation from this compounded body of flesh and blood, I must know this body to be like a transient illusion. At last, now as the intermediate state of reality arises before me, renouncing the barest sense of awe, terror, or fear, I must recognize all that arises to be awareness manifesting naturally of itself. No such sounds, lights, and rays, to be visionary phenomena of the intermediate state. At this moment, having reached this critical point, I must not fear the assembly of peaceful and wrathful deities which manifest naturally. At last, now at the intermediate state of rebirth arises before me, I must with one pointed intention concentrate my mind and resolutely connect with the residual potency of my virtuous past actions. I must obstruct the womb entrance and call to mind the methods of reversal. This is the time when perseverance and purity of perception are imperative. I must give up all jealousy and meditate on my spiritual teacher with consort. From the mouth of the accomplished masters come these words: O ye, with your mind far away, thinking death will not come, entranced by the pointless activities of this life, if you were to return empty-handed now, would not your life's purpose have been utterly confused? Recognize what it is that you truly need. It is a sacred teaching for liberation. So should you not practice this divine, sacred teaching beginning from the very moment? And it is also said, if I choose not to take the oral teachings of the spiritual teacher to heart, Am I not the deceiver of myself?
Natural liberation of habitual tendencies, the 10-branch prayer for the accumulation of merit. Visualize in the space before you the 3 precious jewels and the deities of the 100 enlightened families, and then recite as follows. The branch of taking refuge. Om Ah Hom, Om Ah Hom, Om Ah Hom. I respectfully take refuge inseparably from now until enlightenment in the infinitude of peaceful and wrathful deities, the conquerors gone to bliss, the 3 precious jewels, the meditational deities, the ocean of dakinis, and the assembly of oath-bound protectors within the infinite Buddha fields, reaching to the limits of space. Branch of invitation. I request the infinite, peaceful, and wrathful deities of the 10 directions and 4 times, compassionate emanations embodying discriminative wisdom, awareness, and skillful means, pervading the vast, infinite space of reality's expanse, to come to this place for the sake of all living beings. Rejoice and summon. The branch of requesting the deities to be seated. I request that the meditational deities be seated here on sun, moon, and lotus cushions, symbolizing skillful means, discriminative awareness, and their stainless union. Upon their bejeweled thrones, fashioned in the form of lions and so forth, in an attitude of unblemished supreme delight. Within this mandala of pristine cognition, which is the natural purity of phenomenal existence. The branch of paying homage. I bow down to the assembly of the peaceful and wrathful conquerors, to the father and mother deities and all their offspring, whose essence is the supreme cognition of Samantabhadra, displayed as uncorrupted bliss in the secret womb of Samantabhadri. The branch of making offerings. I request the peaceful and wrathful conquerors, the oceans of those gone to bliss, to partake of these inestimable outer, inner, and secret offerings, both those actually arrayed and those mentally emanated, which are offered for the benefit of all living beings. The branch of the confession of negativity. I acknowledge and remorsefully confess all my negative obscurations and all my habitual tendencies of body, speech, and mind, beginninglessly influenced by the 3 poisons, which are the accumulating causes for rebirth among the lower states of suffering in cyclic existence. The branch of sympathetic rejoicing. I rejoice with great delight in the Buddha fields of supreme bliss, where all phenomenal existence is recognized as the pervasion of reality's expanse. I rejoice in all compassionate acts, in their merits, and in their altruistic intention, and in all deeds that are the source of merit and pristine cognition. The branch of turning the wheel of the sacred teachings. I exhort the teachers throughout the fields of the 10 directions, for as numerous as atoms, to stir from their meditative commitments for the sakes of all living beings, all sentient beings, and to turn the wheel of the sacred teachings, thus entirely pervading the reaches of space. The branch of requesting the Buddhas not to enter nirvana. I beseech you, O teachers, infinite Buddhas without exception, to remain present and not to pass into parinirvana, and to continue to enact deeds of extensive benefit for the sake of beings until the world systems of cyclic existence have been emptied. The branch of the dedication of merit to the unsurpassed greater vehicle. By the power of whatever past, present, and future virtues I accumulate, may all sentient beings throughout the furthest reaches of space mature into worthy recipients of the unsurpassed greater vehicle, and then swiftly attain the status of the infinite, peaceful, and wrathful deities. As the 10-branch prayer is concluded, the Lama visualizes that all the objects of refuge melt into light and then gradually dissolve into the crowns of each of the attending persons, including the dying person and himself.
The natural liberation of habitual tendencies, purification. It is the unified intention of the body, speech, and mind, of the 42 peaceful and 58 wrathful deities of the great Buddha field that displays the wisdom that cuts through all ignorance to manifest their wisdom for the benefit of the enlightenment of all sentient beings. Om Ahom Bodhicitta Mahasukha Jana Datu Ah Om Rulu Rulu Hong Jo Om Hong Om Ahom Bodhicitta Mahasukha Jana Datu Ah Om Rulu Rulu Hong Jo Hong Om Ahom Bodhicitta Mahasukha Jana Datu Ah Om Rulu Rulu Hong Jo Hong. From the field of reality's expanse, uncreated and pure, within a celestial palace, which is a seminal point of light, pure, unceasing, and radiant, through the natural expressive power of one's own mind, uncontrived and empty, intrinsic awareness, radiant and empty, arises in the form of Vajrasattva. Seated upon a bejeweled throne, adorned with lotus, sun, and moon cushions, the right hand holds a Vajra at the heart, symbolizing the union of awareness, of absolute wisdom, and emptiness. The left hand supports a bell resting on the hip, symbolizing the union of wisdom appearances and emptiness. And the head is adorned with a garland of perfect Buddhas, representing the 5 enlightened families of those gone to bliss. Thus, Vajrasattva manifests in the form of the Buddha body of perfect resource, exquisitely adorned with silks and jewels, seated in the posture of royal ease, with the right leg extended and the left drawn in. Radiating at the heart is the seed syllable Hum, surrounded by the 100-syllable mantra. Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Tenopa Drista Dredo Me Bhava Sutto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anuraktu Me Bhava Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sutsa Me Sitsan Triya Kuru Hong Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Saratada Gata Bajra Mame Munsa Bajri Bhava Mahasamaya Satwaha Om Bajra Satwa Samaya Manupalaya Bajra Satwa Tenopa Drista Dredo Me Bhava Sutto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anuraktu Me Bhava Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sutsa Me Sitsan Triya Kuru Hong Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Sara Tada Gata Bajra Mame Munsa Bajri Bhava Mahasamaya Satwaha Om Bajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Tenopa Drista Dredo Me Bhava Sutto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anuraktu Me Bhava Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sutsa Me Sitsan Triya Kuru Hong Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Saratada Gata Bajra Mame Munsa Bajri Bhava Mahasamaya Satwaha. We repeat this as much as possible so that the 2 obscurations may be cleansed. The obscuration of afflictive emotions and the obscuration of wisdom. The English translation for the 100-syllable mantra is in our prayer books. I'll recite it now. Om Vajrasattva Samaya. Help to protect my vow to purify myself. May you remain firm with me. Grant me the complete satisfaction. Grow with me. Be loving towards me. Grant me the attainments to master the powers beyond body and nature. Show me all the deeds of body, speech, and mind. Make my mind heart good, virtuous, and auspicious. Revel in the bliss of the four joys, O Blessed One, who embodies the essence within me. Do not abandon me. Grant me the realizations of the indestructible nature. Make me one with you. Thus, I signify my unity with non-duality. Ah. Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions or comments about any of the prayers that we just recited? Okay. Debbie, welcome you. Are things okay with Skip? Is he home or did they keep him overnight?
They've yet to decide. They were just delayed in doing one more test that we thought had been done already, but it hadn't. So I may have to hop off, but we think he's fine. So thank you all. But I probably am going to have to go get him at some point here.
Okay. All right. Well, very good. Well, our thoughts and hearts are with you.
Thank you.
Okay, so if there's no questions or comments, then we'll move forward. So we left off in the main practice that this would be the daily practice that we would do if we wish to really become one, becoming the embodiment of the Bardo Thodol teachings. So it is, it's sort of like a reference to the book that we've been through, but it's a smaller version without a lot of detail in order for us to kind of remind ourselves what it is that is contained within the Bardo Thodol book itself. So we're on page 31. We have just gone through the peaceful deities in the heart center, and we have gone through the gatekeepers, the four gatekeepers in the heart center, and we went through the 6 sages. The 6 Buddhas are in each of the human realms to rescue, to point the way, to give relief to the suffering beings in those realms so that they can recognize where they are, how it is that they got there, and how it is that they can liberate themselves from their suffering to be able to move further along the path of enlightenment. So now we come to page 31, which is begins with sort of a review of what these prior pages were in the daily main practice. So I read, Om Ah Hung. The 42 deities of the peaceful assembly blaze with rays of light, radiant, vibrant, resplendent, and naturally beautiful. Their bodies are supple, slender, handsome, upright, and youthful, exquisitely ornamented and splendidly endowed with the major and minor marks. To you, the assembled peaceful deities of the indestructible expanse, I bow down, make offerings, take refuge, and pray. As soon as we, the deceased, die and begin to transmigrate, at that very moment, when the visions of the intermediate state of reality dawn, and we, the deceased, roam alone in cyclic existence, driven by the 5 deep-seated poisons, may the peaceful male deities draw us forward, leading us on a path of radiant, multicolored light, which is the 5 pristine cognitions combined. May the supreme female consorts, queens of the expanse, support us from behind, and may the male and female gatekeepers support us from the perimeter. And thus encircled, may we be rescued from the fearsome passageway of the intermediate state and be escorted to the level of an utterly perfected Buddha. So here we're visualizing, we're in the Bardo of reality. We're visualizing the 5 Buddha families as we've gone through before. in the different quadrants of the mandala that we talked about last time. And we see that all their light coming together in like a rainbow of light. And we may have a particular affinity for one of those Buddhas or one of those lights, and we should follow that light. We should move right along with that. So the male deities are like the tractors that are pulling us, and the female deities have our back and they're supporting us from behind. And the gatekeepers and the bodhisattvas are supporting us on the perimeters to be able to, in our heart center, to be able to help our mindfulness of where it is, what it is that we're doing, why it is that we are doing that, and so on. What we are trying to get to is the Dharma Dhatu, is the Dharmakaya, the Dharmakaya body of the Buddha. And this is the uncontrived, unfabricated mind of the Buddha. It has no language associated with it, no conception associated with it at all. These deities are the Sombogogaya deities, or Sombogogaya deities. These are the enjoyment body deities, the subtle enjoyment bodies that help us to focus, to come together, to be able to understand the different activities of the Dharmakaya, of the Buddha, the mind of the Buddha. So this is the subtle enjoyment body of the Buddha. This would be the intellect to help us to overcome our confusions and our afflictive emotions and so on. So this is the representation here. So now on page 32, we recite Om Ah Hum. At this time, when we dwell within the intermediate state of living, the 42 assembled peaceful deities are radiantly present within the celestial palace of our own hearts, embodied in the form of a cluster of 5 colored lights. Yet, as soon as we, the deceased, die and begin to transmigrate, this assembly of peaceful deities will emerge from our hearts and fill the space before us. Each of the innumerable central and peripheral forms will be fully endowed with the 8 ornaments and 5 robes of attire of the peaceful deities, each composed of the 5 colored lights, indicative of the union of radiance and emptiness, and encircled by an expanse of rainbow light. Vibrant, beaming shafts of light, indicative of the 5 pristine cognitions, emanating 5 colored seminal points, sounds, lights, and rays, radiant, vibrant, resplendent, clear, and naturally resonant, will beam out as if piercing our hearts. Concomitant with these lights of the 5 pristine cognitions, the 6 light paths indicative of the 6 classes of deluded impure beings will also dawn before us. At this moment, O compassionate assembly of peaceful deities, blessed transcendent ones, beings of compassion, do not withhold your compassion, but draw us forward on the path of radiant rainbow light, which is the 4 pristine cognitions combined, and draw us back from the paths of dull lights, which are the doors to the 6 states of impure existence. So this is a review of going through the Bardo and being seduced by the dull lights, when the bright lights of the Buddha families are very bright and very intense. And if we're not prepared for that, the seduction of the dull lights becomes irresistible to us. And we find that we're being pulled back down into a body, being pulled down into being an ordinary human being again, or maybe some other life form that we've talked about. So this is for our meditation. this whole practice that we're talking about, this daily practice, is to be able to familiarize ourselves with this whole process. So we need to be able to have the tools that we need, the illustrations, the images that we've got, and to follow these texts, the words of these, and to meditate on these, to really spend time contemplating what the meaning of these things are, and using the guides that we have, that we've been giving in the books, and the flow charts, and the spreadsheets that we've given you to help you and so on to recognize this. So this is how we get familiar with this, by meditating on this, by contemplating this, and being able to recreate this in our minds and in our hearts. As we're doing this in our minds, this is where the Sombogogaya Deities are working, and here in our intellectual mind. So we have to do that, and as we do that, our heart begins to open up. And as that begins to open up, this is where the lights come from. And the lights aren't the kind of lights that we see with our eyes, but they are lights that are representative of the pure body, of the pure illusory body of each of these deities. And then slowly, if we do this over and over again, we find that we get familiar with these deities, we begin to recognize these deities within ourselves, and we may, sort of gravitate to one or two, or maybe all of them, particular deities that resonate with us personally for any number of reasons that, would be our karmic seeds. And we should pursue that and allow that to happen. And then maybe when we initially are finding those deities that we resonate with, then to cultivate the familiarity with the ones that don't come so easy to us, so that they begin to be just as familiar to us as the other deities and so on. This is how we are increasing the positive karmic seeds of the practice and so on. So we see this all operating together. It comes from practice. It comes from engaging in this. So we shouldn't be afraid of this. We shouldn't be fearful of it in any way. And if we need support, just speak right up, and we'll see what we can manage to be able to help do these practices and everything together. So coming to the center, doing these things at home, doing them on Zoom together, we can do things like that help support this. But we get whatever benefit we can out of that, but if we don't make the effort, there's very little benefit. So this is the work that needs to be done for this. There are many deity yoga practices that we do. Adrikung Dharma Surya Center, other centers and so on have different deity yoga practices. We have a deity yoga book here that has many of the practices for those deities in this book, and that will help us to familiarize with those deities. So all this is all working together, and it's incumbent upon ourselves to engage in this. It's not going to reach out and come to us without our first recognizing that we need the help, and start pulling that help in by engaging in these practices and asking for the help and so on. Does anybody have any questions or comments about this?
Lance, I have a practice question.
Okay.
So in working with this, I've tried to approach it, of course, as a sadhana practice. So what I've been doing, and I'd appreciate whether you think this is right, is at the Vajrasattva part of this, since all of these deities are emanations of Vajrasattva, I'm taking the time there, not just to recite the 100-syllable mantra, but to really do the generation stage visualizations. That's one way I've I've done it and then move on into the main practice. And then the other way is to actually move after Vajrasattva into Amitabha practice, my regular daily Amitabha practice, and then do this. Do you feel both of those are appropriate ways, or is there another way? I appreciate that generally you're very flexible and say whatever works, but am I right to be trying in a more traditional way to put this in a sadhana context?
We were visualizing ourselves as Vajrasattva, that we become Vajrasattva, and we are on this path of purification. And that's the first step, to recognize that we are Vajrasattva. So to engage in that practice is very, very, very practical and so on. So we could say that Vajrasattva is Vajrasattva Ascobia, Vajrasattva Ratnasambhava, Vajrasattva Amitabha, and so on. So through that purification of our impure illusory body, we have an illusory body that we, when we meditate, we can experience that. But it's an impure because it hasn't been perfected. It still has the foibles and still has the karmic seeds that we're attached to and have aversions to and all that. But through the purification practice of Vajrasattva, we can approach the pure illusory body of Vajrasattva and those other deities. And that's what we need to do. So the answer to your question is yes. It begins with Vajrasattva. And then we get support from the other bodhisattvas and so on. It's all these different practices working together. But yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
So we all have to develop our own practice, and it's good to have the guidance of your meditational guru, whoever that might be, and to talk with them. Our brothers and sisters, our Dharma brothers and sisters in the Sangha and so on, can be very helpful with that sometimes. You want to talk with somebody who's had some experience with this, but to develop the practice. And that's the biggest thing that people are missing. They'll come and take all these empowerments and they'll read all these things and so on. But until you actually sit and contemplate and allow this to transform within ourselves, it just becomes this vicarious experience. It's on very thin ice, and when challenged, the ice just melts away and you just fall into the ocean again. So the practice is an essential point of this. Does anybody have a differing opinion about that? Does there anybody has any experience with this? With practice? Can somebody validate what it is that I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I'll help you out, Lance. I agree. There are lots of ways to get the teachings inside you. Reading it devotionally on your own is important. Reading the books, coming to do this together. That's why I keep showing up. There's hope if I keep showing up.
Okay, thank you. Michael, Amanda, I know that you are, serious practitioners. Have you any experience with developing a regular practice that has helped you to transform into into being on the path?
Lance, I would say that no matter what I begin to practice, practice in itself is different in a lot of blatant and subtle ways. It's never boring, and it's because it's complex and at the same time simple and enjoyable. I find that I continue to open up big doors, little doors, open up windows, open up the shutters, and let the Dharma breeze flow through.
Very good. Thank you. Amanda?
Yep. I don't really know what to say other than a daily practice is just really wonderful and helps me so much. And yeah, I don't ever want to go a day without doing my practice. So I'm very grateful for it.
I see Sandra's with us now, and I know Sandra's a longtime practitioner. Could you comment a little bit on your experience with developing your own personal practice, and in particular with Deity yoga practice?
That's so interesting. I really like deity practice. I feel like if I do an accumulation of something, someone makes a requirement or suggests it for some reason, like, everyone do Parnashabari or everyone do Medicine Buddha because of the epidemic, then I feel so close to the deity just by doing that much practice. Like, I know that there's this idea that maybe you feel close to one and that's a special thing for you, but I have this thing happen where if I do enough practice of anything, I just feel that closeness to whatever deity it is, and I know that ultimately, of course, they're all the same. So that's, and I don't know, I think for me, I feel lots of healing happen through mantra recitation and well, I was going to say light and mantra recitation, but even, the Tara prayer, the 7 supplications, that prayer, I find that prayer so powerful. Garchen Rinpoche gave me a requirement to do 25 a day for some period of time, and I was doing that. It just because, if I had been on my own, I would have said maybe 3, and doing 25 pushed it to a place I wouldn't have gone by myself. And I see the power of the prayer, And so what's that? That must be connecting to some space, because what is that? That's not light and that's not mantra. It's a prayer. So maybe you can explain it to me.
Well, you're tuning your radio into that channel, that is the Tara channel, that is the mother of the Buddha channel, and yeah. So like you said, we find that it's the Buddha radio, and all these different Buddhas are there, but it's all within the same wavelength, and just which one that we're tuning into. So the way in which we do that is by setting up our vibration. That's what the mantra is. I think I've used this analogy before, that as we are reciting the mantras, we are vibrating along with that and tuning into that particular channel. And it's amazing how it works. And it's in the beginning, it may seem subtle, but after a while, it becomes very powerful and it becomes very effortless. And you find that you take that channel with you wherever you go. You kind of have that in your going around in your body, that vibration going around, and you're driving along going Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, or something like that. That particular deity. Thomas, how about you? You've been a practitioner for a number of years and everything. Do you have any comment about this?
My main practice is a sitting practice. And over the years, the flow of thoughts has diminished. And I'd say that the greatest result has been a gradual erosion of conceptualization. I'll leave it at that.
That's really good. So that's what we're trying. That's the Dharmakaya. That's exactly what we're talking about. So, but to get there is a process to get to that point of non-conceptualization and being comfortable in that. So first we have to exhaust all these other things. So that's what the practices are designed to be able to do, to lead us in that direction. And through our contemplation, through our meditation and so on, we exhaust all those different possibilities and find that it's all within us, and it all just falls away into what we would call the emptiness or the Dharmakaya. Does anybody else have any comment? Louisa, do you have a comment, or Gary, or anybody I haven't called on? Bhavani and William? Debbie?
Well, these have been wonderful comments. I just loved hearing them. They're so rich. And it reminded me that when you do deity practice and you are accumulating and that familiarization starts happening, there's this kind of turning that happens at a certain point where you're no longer working on the practice. You realize how deeply the practice is working on you. And if you just at that point kind of let go and watch, it's amazing how it takes you along and actually teaches you how to do it. You find yourself approaching it in ways you never would have thought of to approach it yourself initially. But I know just what you mean about if you take on an accumulation goal and are doing more than you would have done on your own, how that takes you into a different part of the territory than you've ever been before, and how wonderful that can be. So like all of you, I just love deity yoga practice. It's just wonderful.
Okay, well, if anybody has another comment, otherwise we'll move on to this next part then. So on page 33. So it says, Om Ahom, in the celestial palace of perfect resource within one's own throat, amidst an expanse permeated with rainbows and lights, in the center channel branch of the energy center of perfect resource is Padma Nate Swara, the great awareness holder of maturation. Red and radiant, glowing in an array of 5 colored lights and embraced by the Dakini of pristine cognition. Pristine cognition is the clear light. Their union symbolizing the coalescence of bliss and emptiness. She holds a blood-filled skull and a curved knife raised in the gesture of pointing to the sky. May the awareness holders of Buddha body protect all living beings. Om Ahom, in the eastern channel branch of the energy center of the perfect resource, within one's throat is the great awareness holder who abides on the levels, white, radiant, smiling, and embraced by the white Dakini. She holds a blood-filled skull cup and a curved knife, raised in the gesture of pointing to the sky. May the awareness holders of Buddha mind protect all living beings. Om Ahom, in the southern channel branch of the energy center of the perfect resource within one's throat is the great awareness holder with power over lifespan. Yellow, radiant, smiling, and embraced with the yellow Dakini. She holds a blood-filled skull and a curved knife, raised in the gesture of pointing to the sky. May the awareness holders of Buddha attributes protect all living beings. Om Ahom, in the western channel branch of the energy center of the perfect resource within one's throat, is the great awareness holder of the great seal. Red, radiant, smiling, and embraced by the red Dakini. She holds a blood-filled skull and a curved knife, raised in the gesture of pointing to the sky. May the awareness holders of Buddha's speech protect all living beings. Oma Hom, in the northern channel branch of the energy center of the perfect resource, within one's throat is the great awareness holder of spontaneous presence. Green, radiant, wrathful, smiling, and embraced by the green Dakini, she holds a blood-filled skull and a curved knife, raised in the gesture of pointing to the sky. May the awareness holder of Buddha activity protect all beings. So here, this is all in the throat center, and the throat center is the speech. And the speech is the activity of the brain. You know, what we say and everything is a product of our intellectualization of things. So through this throat center, through these deities here, these hero awareness holders, the Vidyadhara, we recognize our habitual tendencies. The things that we've been working on, you know, to overcome our emotions in the heart with the peaceful deities and so on. And no matter how hard we work, there are times or situations that will arise where these hidden habitual tendencies will come out through the things that we say or the things that we do, because the speech is an action. So it can be an action, an activity action like speech can be, but it can be, you know, some way in our conduct or something like that. So we can see that and we can recognize that. And we need to, when it's something that is difficult, when it's something that is painful, when it's something that is causing us suffering, and we can see that, we need to bring it onto the path. So the thing about these 5 pairs of Vidyadhara, these deities, it's a male and a female, and they're all dancing, they're all standing, and they're all in this dancing posture. So the thing that it should remind us of is that there is a choreography that we're going through our everyday lives in. But sometimes something happens and we lose a little bit of balance. And our foot falls this way, our body shifts that way, and we move our legs to be able to keep us from falling down and so on. So that choreography is now creating a new step. And we're bringing that step onto the path. And that helps us to regain our balance. It begins to see that there is this choreography that we've designed, that we've been part of, but it's kind of rigid. But through this creativity portion of things, we begin to broaden ourselves. We begin to see more changes in our lives. And they're healthy changes. They're good changes. These are the hero awareness holders. How it works, you know, and not that it's all so static. You know, it doesn't work that way with us. That there's all these things that are changing. So we learn how to flow with the change like a great dancer. So each one of these 5 pairs, these couples of the Vidyadhara are showing us something. So their names speak of what it is that they're showing us. You know, the maturation, the abiding on the levels, the power over lifespan, all these things are very dynamic. You know, so it's showing us that we become holders of the wisdom within that dynamic. We're not afraid of the dynamic. We bring it onto the path. Whatever falls wrong, which seems to be an error, we bring onto the path, and it just becomes part of our lexicon. It becomes part of our experience. And this is what helps us to be teachers of ourselves and of others, because we begin to recognize those situations. And we can say, oh yeah, I know what that is. And let's talk about that. We can explain what that is and so on. So we should open ourselves up and allow these changes to manifest within our lives and so on. And these Vidyadhara are what is pointing that out to us. They are the examples of what we need to be amidst all those changes. Does that make sense? Can you see that? So again, this is something that needs to be contemplated. You know, to think about this, to read these and then sit there and you know, give it a half an hour or 15 minutes or whatever it is, and go through the investigation of it. You know, when we talk about the stages of meditation, you know, the Khenpo Samdop has written a great book for us called The Stages of Meditation. And we go through the shamatha, you know, we go through stages and we get to the shamatha, calm abiding meditation. And that's great. But then as we are in that meditation, thoughts begin to come up. Things start to come up. And they're not mundane things. They are things we start getting glimpses of the Dharmakaya. We start getting glimpses of the Sombogogaya. We start getting glimpses of what the Bardo Thodol is all about. And we say, oh, what was that? And we need to investigate that. We need to look into that. And we need to we move from our shamatha, calm abiding meditation, into the vipassana meditation, the insight meditation, because those things that come up are insights. And we may not recognize them when they first occur. But then we see that there's maybe a sense of a light, a red light or a blue light or whatever. There's a sense of compassion with it, or a sense of wisdom. There's something about it that bears research. So we start looking into practices. Again, we talk to our teachers, we talk to our brothers and sisters, and we begin to investigate what this is. And then we become the master of that. We become we gain the experience of that. And then we settle back down and we can go back into our shamatha meditation, only for another insight to pop up somewhere. And then we look at that. So I'm not talking about mundane things. I'm not talking about things that lead to emotions. I'm talking about things that are quite profound and quite, you know, in the beginning, they might be quite startling. You know, wow, how did that wisdom come up in my life? You might be talking to somebody, and somebody you just met who came into the center or something like that, and you happen to be the person that is sitting talking to them, and you're explaining some things to them, and then all of a sudden, a lot of disparate things that you've learned from different teachings and from different practices and everything, all of a sudden kind of crystallize in your talking. You say, wow, where did that come from? You're thinking in the back of your mind as you're saying this to somebody. But this is an example of the hero awareness holder. You know, and we are now making our habitual tendency one of wisdom, one of compassion, one of dharma, instead of being a negative or a mundane habitual tendency. So we begin to recognize those changes happening. It's that dance that we kind of go out of our rigid way, and now we have this new creative dance, and we're bringing it, and we say, oh, it brings light into my life. It brings light into my conversation, into my mind. So consider that vipassana. When that vipassana comes, we need to work on the beginning parts to get to that. We can't forsake those. We can't jump ahead, but to get ourselves into the shamatha meditation and be able to be stable in that, to allow this insight to rise up. Anybody have any comment about that? Anybody have any experience with that? Okay. There's the invitation then. This is what changes a hearer into a practitioner. And what changes a practitioner into becoming a yogini or a yogi, to become in union with this. Yoga means union. So female, one who is in union is a yogini, and a yogi is one who is a male, who is in union, where this embodiment has all come together, and this insight now is all coming together and so on, and based on experience. So it takes time to develop this, to cultivate this. And it only happens when we start working on our practice. We start committing to making the time to do this over and over and over and over again. And ultimately it becomes very, very serene. You know, that's what we like. That's what we might have started out with that. You know, I wanted to meditate because to relieve the stress in my life, but now I find out that there's so much more than to life than all that stuff that was causing me stress, or just the mechanics of reducing that stress. There's a whole spiritual aspect to my life that has been illuminated. So the hero awareness holders are the revealers of our habitual tendencies, to show us what we've done and what we need, and what we're working on, what we're doing. So now I go back to page 36. So here's the prayer. Om Ahum. To you, the assembly of awareness holders, the heroes and dakinis, I bow down, make offerings, take refuge and pray. As soon as we, the deceased, die and begin to transmigrate, at that very moment, when the visions of the intermediate state of reality dawn, and we, the deceased, roam alone in cyclic existence, driven by the 5 deep-seated habitual tendencies, may the heroic awareness holders draw us forward, leading us on a path of radiant, multicolored light, which is the luminance of spontaneously arising pristine cognition. May the supreme female consorts, the assembly of Dakini, support us from behind, and thus encircled, may we be rescued from the fearsome passageway of the intermediate state, and be escorted to the pure fields of the skyfarers. The skyfarers are the dakas and the dakinis. The dakas are the male, and the dakinis are the female. So this prayer here encapsulates what I was just trying to explain. Does it much better than I could explain it, and should be an inspiration to you. Any comments or questions? Okay. So then we move on to page 37. Om Ahum. At this time, when we dwell within the intermediate state of living, at this time, when we dwell within the intermediate state of living, where we are right now, right? There's 6 bardos, and we're in the intermediate state of living. The assemblies of awareness holders, both heroes and dakinis, are radiantly present within the celestial palace of our energy center, a perfect resource within our own throats, embodied in the form of a cluster of 5-colored bright lights. Yet, as soon as we die and begin to transmigrate, this divine assembly of awareness holders will emerge from our throat center and fill the space before us. Amidst a plethora of musical sounds, They will manifest in myriad dancing postures, pounding and vibrating throughout the world's systems and generating a vibrant, beaming path of bright light, indicative of spontaneously arising pristine cognition. Simultaneously, the dull light path of the animal realm, indicative of delusion, will also dawn before us. O divine assembly of awareness holders, at that moment, do not withhold your compassion, but draw us back from the dull light path, which is the gateway to the deluded animal realms, and draw all beings along the path of bright light, which is the luminance of spontaneously arising pristine cognition. Seize us with your compassion, ensuring that we recognize the characteristics of the intermediate state. Empower us so that we may become awareness holders, children of the conquerors. The conquerors are the Buddhas. The children is working up to become those conquerors. So this is a very elegant way of describing this, you know. So when we go through meditation, I'm sure I've said this before, when we go through this meditation, every meditation is a death and a rebirth. If we are successful at being able to cultivate our stages of meditation and so on, there's a period where we are liberated. And that liberation is, you know, no thought, and you don't recognize it until after your thought catches up with it. That's when you recognize and say, oh, I just had this vision. I just had this glimpse. I just had this moment, you know, and then you're recognizing that there was something that happened during that time that you bring into your life, and you keep it with you. As you get up off the cushion, you finish your meditation and so on. And that's the rebirth. So there's a death. When we go up to that point, when we liberate, sitting on the cushion, then we have that experience of being in the Bardo. Remember, there's 6 Bardos, right? The Bardo of living. And one of the 2 Bardos in the living is the meditative concentration, the Bardo of meditative concentration. So this is it. There's also dreams. Dreams are involuntary. But meditative concentration is completely guided, is completely controlled. It's how we learn to control the mind. The deepest part of the mind, the meditative mind. So this is how we prepare for our death, because we go through this, we have the potential for that every single time we sit down to meditate, every time we sit down to do a practice. Every practice should have a meditation period within it. And we'll find that more and more that becomes the most enjoyable part. And that we quickly go through all the preparation stuff, the preliminary stuff, to get us to that meditation part. Sometimes we can just sit down and bam, we just go right into the meditation without any preliminary at all, because we're already tuned in to that radio channel. And then we can have a very deep and profound experience. It can happen the first thing in the morning. It can happen late at night. You know, sometimes you might wake up 3 o'clock in the morning and you say to yourself, well, I can go back to bed, or maybe I should go and do a meditation. Surprise yourself. 5 o'clock in the morning, instead of saying, oh, I'm going to go back to bed for another, you know, hour or so. Instead, get up and do a practice. So we have to experiment a little bit. And we have to maybe push ourselves a little bit in the direction, because it may not in the beginning come naturally to us. But the more that we do it, the more enjoyable it becomes. And the more we find that's our natural mind. You've heard that expression over and over and over again. Khenpo Samdop talks about it all the time. Garchen Rinpoche talks about it all the time. His Holiness Chetsang Rinpoche talks about it all the time. It's our natural mind. It's our true nature. True nature, it's natural. That's our true nature. And as long as we are, in this impure, illusory body, we're holding on to that which we go look into the mirror and you have a name and you have a job and you do all these things that, we got to break through that, liberate from that. There's a phrase that in many of the practices is Bajra Samaza. You go through this whole practice and there's this point at the end and it just says Bajra Samaza, the indestructible vow that breaks through. And if you, instead of vow, use the word commitment, promise that breaks through. When you break through that ceiling of your mind, and now that becomes a floor. Okay. So now I'm on the middle of page 38. Om Ah Hung. At the crown center of oneself visualizes Vajrasattva in the celestial palace of the blazing skull within one's brain, amidst an expanse of light, composed of flaming seminal points of rainbow light, is the assembly of blood-drinking deities, Harukas, wrathful deities, standing in clusters. So this is exactly what we were talking about earlier, that we visualize ourselves as Vajrasattva. So we're in our cranium, we're in our brain, we're in our head. Visualize as Vajrasattva, who's trying to purify. And the way in which we purify is through confession. The Vajrasattva is the confession Buddha. So through that confession, we're purifying. In the celestial palace of the blazing skull within one's brain, amidst the expanse of light composed of flaming seminal points of rainbow light. So those seminal points are those points where wisdom is coming. Where does that wisdom come from? It comes from these seminal points of light. And what's a seminal point? It's just this, this little dot. It's impossible to know where it is. They're everywhere. It's like the Big Bang. Where does the Big Bang come from? It comes from a seminal point of light. So the assembly of blood-drinking deities. So if you remember the blood-drinking deities, the Harukas, these are the ones who now are helping us to overcome our mental misconceptions. Our mental misconceptions. All the things that we think we know, all the things that we hide our wisdom in, the arrogance that human beings have is locked in these mental misconceptions, these stories that we tell ourselves and we believe in and so on. And so we have to burn through those. So we find that the symbolism of the blood-drinking deities is that all this stuff is not to be feared. All this stuff is to be enjoyed. So if we have a skull cup, full of blood and offal and all this, repugnant stuff, we need to be able to recognize it as just stuff that is empty of its own true nature, and it only appears to be very terrible, ugly stuff, but it is the stuff that makes up of wisdom. And so we need to imbibe in that. We need to take that in as the Haruka. And then through that, we're able to overcome, we're able to correct, we're able to purify those mental misconceptions. So then the next section here on page 38 says, Om Ahum, in the central channel branch of the skull within one's brain, amidst an expanse of light composed of flaming seminal points of rainbow light, stands Samantabhadra in the form of Mahatara Haruka. He has 3 faces, brown, white, and red, and the 6 arms, and 3 right arms brandish a vajra, a kadvanga, and small drum, and the left holds a bell, a blood-filled skull, and a noose of entrails. Mahatara Haruka is joyously and indivisibly embraced by Krodheshvari. May these 2, the central male and female consorts, guide all beings to liberation. So all this minutia of detail is very interesting, to look at and so on. But, but don't let yourself get caught up in that minutia at the beginning part. And even at the end, it becomes just stuff that helps us to recognize the multiplicity in which all this is operating, the phenomenal nature in which all this is operating. This is Sombogogaya. This is relative. This is phenomenal nature. The heart center is Dharmakaya, is the Dharmadhatu, is the non-conceptual. So the non-conceptual then displays itself like a seminal point of light. It explodes, and then all this phenomenal nature appears. So the Sombogogaya is part of that, are the emanations of that explosion, to help us to understand what this is, or to guide us to be able to let go of all this stuff so that we can experience this, which is a natural part of who, this is our natural part. So Samantabhadra, the primal Buddha, and his consort Samantabhadri then manifest as these Haruka class of deities who are there to with their great compassion. Their fierceness is their compassion. The big mistake that people make about the wrathful deities is that they're angry. They're not angry. They're just very compassionate. And what they are so passionate about, what they are so compassionate about, is that their loving kindness, their wisdom, and their compassion has to be greater than the negativity that they are overcoming. They have to be more fierce than that. So they have this aura, they have this look, the artists have given it, this picture of these wrathful, angry deities, but they are subduing anger. They are absorbing it and transforming it, anger and jealousy and ignorance and so on. So it's their love and their compassion that we're seeing in that way. So fierce is a great word to describe that rather than wrathful, because I think wrathful has a hateful connotation to it. Oh, you're going to feel the wrath of so-and-so, but to be fierce, you can be good-natured and be fierce. And that's what the Harukas are. So Mahatara Haruka and Krodheshvari represent that. He represents the skillful means in this phenomenal nature. All the activities, he's the embodiment of all those activities. And she is the expanse of all of this. She is the field of all this. She is the mother of all this. So now the next paragraph on page 39. It says, Om Ah Hum, on a throne in the central channel branch of one skull, amidst an expanse of light composed of flaming seminal points of rainbow light, stands Varanchana in the form of Buddha Haruka. He has 3 faces, reddish brown, white, red, 6 arms, 3 right arms brandish a wheel, an axe, and a sword, and the left hold a bell and plowshare and blood-filled skull. Buddha Haruka is joyously and indivisibly embraced by Buddha Krodheshvari. May these 2, the blood-drinking deities of the Sugata family, guide all beings to liberation. So it starts off by saying, here is the peaceful deity, Varanchana, and Varanchana then emanates into this fierce form, the Haruka class, because it needs more fierceness. It needs more power. The peaceful maybe didn't work. So there has to be we got to step it up a notch or 2 and get more powerful, more passionate, more forceful to overcome whatever that negativity is, those emotions or whatever. So,
Lance,
yes.
the phrase blood drinking is really metaphorical, is it not? To expand on that for me.
Well, yeah, it is metaphorical. And I was explaining that it looks at our dualistic nature. You know, one side of the dualism say, well, everything should be milk and honey. But then on the other side, everything is blood and guts. But to find that they're just appearances of the same thing. And to bring them together. To be able to see that it's just appearances of our nature, of our human nature. And we're purifying our human nature. We're purifying the milk and honey. We're purifying the blood and guts.
So it's purification, is what the expression means.
Yes. So the Haruka class is able to take in that which seems to be so repugnant, the blood and guts, and enjoy that and purify that. And in purifying it, it liberates it. The milk and honey can be the source of arrogance. Oh, all I eat is milk and honey. You know, I have the best of everything because I'm the greatest. And that needs to be purified. So the purification, what does the purification yield? The purification yields non-conceptuality, non-dualism, non-objectiveness, non-elaboration. Does that help?
That clarifies everything.
So again, it's an experience. You know, hearing the words and everything is one thing, but going through the practice and experiencing that is where it becomes the gnosis. And that's what we all need to do. That's what being a yogi is all about. and then becoming a bodhisattva. A bodhisattva is one who has gone through stages of purification now, is on the final stages of purification. And all that stuff is all taken care of now. It's all been neutralized. So even looking at these tools, the implements that the deities are holding, and to be able to look at them in a clear light, to be able to look at them in their positive nature and say, these are implements, these are tools that this Haruka deity is using in order to overcome whatever that confusion and negativity is coming at them. You know, sometimes they'll talk about the annihilation of certain things, but I don't think that's good. I don't think to look at it as annihilation. I think bringing it onto the path and neutralizing it is the proper way to look at it. Because annihilation has a negativity about it. Okay, so the Sugata family, here, this last line on this page 39, it says the blood drinking deities of the Sugata family. So the Sugata is another Sanskrit word that means well-being, well-born. So what this means is it's showing that these Harukas are in that class, they are Buddhas. And they are in that class that is well-born now. That to get to where they are, they had to go through all kinds of purification. They had to become bodhisattvas. They are emanations of the peaceful deities. So they are well-born. We can find ourselves to be these Haruka class as we are reborn again, as they are. Now, our attention of that may be fleeting. It may only last a moment, may only last 5 minutes as part of our meditation or something before we sink back into, our mundane, ordinary mind. But we can get a taste of that well-born, that being reborn as a Haruka, fearless. Okay. So page 40. Om Ahom. Of course, that's the body, the speech and mind. The body, speech, and mind. And we talk about that all the time. My body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones. These are all the enlightened ones. On a throne in the eastern channel branch of the skull, within one's brain, amidst an expanse of light composed of flaming seminal points of rainbow light, stands Vajrasattva Ascobia in the form of Vajra Haruka. He has 3 faces, dark blue, white, and red, and 6 arms and 3 right arms, brandish a vajra, a skull, and an axe, and the left hold a bell, a blood-filled skull, and a plowshare. Vajra Haruka is joyously and indivisibly embraced by Vajra Krodheshvari. May these 2, the blood-drinking deities of the Vajra family, guide all beings to liberation. So the Vajra family is the indestructible wisdom family. I'm just looking for a definition. Okay. So we see that the mirror-like wisdom of Ascobia now is coming to bear in this Vajra family that works on the misconceptions of anger and hatred, the causes of that and the results of that, the action of that, to liberate through loving kindness. The antidote to that hatred is loving kindness. So then the next one is Om Ah Hung, on a throne in the southern channel branch of the skull within one's brain amidst an expanse of light composed of flaming seminal points of rainbow light stands Ratna Sambhava in the form of Ratna Haruka. He has 3 faces, dark yellow, white and red, and 6 arms, 3 right arms, brandish a jewel, a kadvanga and a club, and the left holds a bell. A noose of entrails, Mahatara, a blood-filled skull and a trident. Ratna Haruka is joyously and indivisibly embraced by Ratna Krodeshvari. May these 2, the blood-drinking deities of the Ratna family, guide all beings to liberation. So we can start, making a list of the colors. What do the colors mean? Why does he have 3 faces? What do the 3 faces represent? Look at the colors. Look at the implements. What do the implements represent, and so on, and see the similarities and see the uniqueness of some of these implements with some of these harukas and so on. And you begin to see how these are working, how they are actualizing their activity, their enlightened activity. So you begin to recognize these. Then when you're looking at a book, or you're looking at a gallery of Tanka paintings or statues, and you begin to recognize these different deities through these implements and through their colors and so on like that, and you begin to see what they mean. So you're building up this glossary of symbolism. So sometimes these definitions are kind of buried in the sadhanas or in descriptions and so on like that. Sometimes in some books and so on. Sometimes they're very easily discovered in glossaries of books. So it's all part of the investigation of the Vipassana. It doesn't have to be a static, I'm sitting here, I got to think of everything, and if I don't have my library all intact in my brain, how extensive is my investigation? Sometimes you got to go start looking in some other libraries and some other books and some other places. You got to meet some other Buddhas. You got to open yourself up to some new things. So then the next one is Oma Hung, on a throne in the western channel branch of the skull within one's brain amidst an expanse of light composed of flaming seminal points of rainbow light stands Amitabha in the form of Padma Haruka. He has 3 faces, dark red, white, and blue, and 6 arms, and 3 right arms brandish a lotus, a kadvanga, and a mace, and the left holds a bell, blood-filled skull, and a small drum. Padma Haruka is joyously and indivisibly embraced by Padma Krodeshvari. May these 2, the blood-drinking deities of the Padma family, guide all beings to liberation. So you can see that, the theme that is riding through all these is basically the same, and there's just a little bit of difference between them. So the nuances you can explore, but you can look at it through the family name, the Vajra family, the Karma family, the Ratna family, and understand what it is that they are using in order to be able to neutralize that negativity, those mental misconceptions. Critical thinking. Om Ahom, on a throne in the northern channel branch of the skull within one's brain, amidst an expanse of light composed of flaming seminal points of rainbow light, stands Amagoga City in the form of Karma Haruka. He has 3 faces, dark green, white, and red, and 6 arms. The 3 right arms brandish a sword, a kadvanga, and a mace, and the left hold a bell, a blood-filled skull, and a plowshare. Karma Haruka is joyously and indivisibly embraced by Karma Krodheshvari. May these 2, the blood-drinking deities of the Karma family, guide all beings to liberation. So the Krodheshvari means the queens of the expanse. You know, and that name comes from the female of the consort in the peaceful. They're queens of the expanse. You know, that appears to us in different ways. It can appear to us as being peaceful. It can appear to us as being wrathful. But that's our dualism that is seeing that. So we're cutting through that dualism. So now we'll just finish with this one bit here now. Page 42. It says, Om Ahung. To you, the 12 central male and female blood-drinking deities, I bow down, make offerings, take refuge, and pray. As soon as we, the deceased, die and begin to transmigrate, at that very moment, when the visions of the intermediate state of reality dawn, and we, the deceased, roam alone in cyclic existence, driven by deep-seated confused perceptions, may the conquerors, the male wrathful blood-drinking deities, draw us forward, leading us on a path of radiant rainbow light, which is the 5 fully perfect, pristine cognitions. May the assembly of wrathful female deities, queens of the expanse, support us from behind, and thus encircled, may we be rescued from the fearsome passageway of the intermediate state and be escorted to the level of an utterly perfect Buddha. So that's the result we're looking for, is to become Buddha. But to know that it is a progressive path. Any comments? What do you think of this? Sandra, what do you think?
Well, it's so weird. I every time I hear the word Haruka, I always think, what is that again? Then I think hero means hero. And then they talk about like the 8 Harukas, and I don't know really who they are. Then I think, I look it up and I see some of them and I go, okay. But I don't really get, I think I'm missing something. I don't really connect to it.
The Haruka class of Buddhas, the Haruka class are the blood-drinking deities. Haruka means blood drinker. That's the translation for it, blood drinker.
Okay.
So there's many more. I mean, here we're looking at 5, but this whole class are the Harukas. You know, there's many more. The gatekeepers are Harukas. You know, it's all these blood drinkers. It's this wrathful class of deities, or the Haruka class.
Yeah, and
so what is it? So what is it that keeps you from digging in to being able to try and fathom what the Harukas are? Is it their repugnance of just the notion of their blood and guts?
no. No. I think I think the best way I feel like I connect to them is when I just think of them as Yab Yum, and I just think of it being non-duality. then I feel like I can connect. When I think of them by themselves,
But non-duality of what?
yeah, I can't, right, like, Vajrakalaya, they're all in Yab Yum, right? I mean,
They're all
maybe not the
dancing.
gatekeepers.
No, they're not. Well, they're dancing. They're all standing. They're all dancing. That's one of the characteristics of the wrathful deities, the Haruka class. They're all standing. The peaceful deities are all sitting on a lotus. The wrathful deities are dancing on a lotus.
Mhm. What do you think that means? I mean, do you feel that they're more action oriented? What does that indicate to you?
Well, they're fierceness and they got to roll with the punches, they got to roll with the changes. And like I was explaining before, that we can have a rigid way of behaving, but then we make a misstep and we go out of balance. And so we got to be a good dancer to be able to incorporate that step and now into our choreography.
Yeah, I don't think I know. I mean, I want to work with Chakra Samvara. That's kind of a goal of mine. I really like Vajrakalaya. I like the mantra. I feel some connection there. But I think maybe this is just new territory for me, and I'm just not as familiar as with some other things.
Do you have this book?
Yeah,
The Gourmet George book?
yes.
Well, if you turn to page 475 in the glossary, there at the very bottom is about 8 or 9 lines of definition of Haruka.
Okay, that's what I need. Yeah.
This is the perfect resource. Why is it called the perfect resource?
I don't know.
The Sombogogaya, a name for the Sombogogaya is the perfect resource. It's a library. If you don't take advantage of the library, then you're just going through with a very myopic point of view with things and a lot of questions with no answers. But if you start digging in, we got to do this ourselves. We can rely on our teachers, to guide us in a direction. But then we all have to discover this, our Buddha nature for ourselves. Louisa, what do you think about this?
I guess I just question why there's so much blood and guts and human corpse and skulls and
Because it's the thing that we fear the most. And it's just kind of shocking ourselves into seeing that it's just appearances, that it's all temporary. It's just our imaginations. We're creating these fears. So it's shocking us into recognizing that. So, the Chod practice, are you familiar with the Chod practice?
Yes.
CHOD? I mean, what is it? They go up in the charnel ground and they start, practicing in the middle of dismembered bodies and vultures and stuff like that. Why? Because it really brings your mindfulness together. If you can practice in that atmosphere, there's enlightenment is right on the threshold for you.
yeah,
All is not milk and honey.
I understand that part. I know. But I guess I know it's just symbolic and it's another side of our ego or our mind, our humanistic side. But I just see it over and over and I just like, I'm just, it's not confusion. I'm just wondering why there's so much of that I don't understand that part. I just, yeah. But
Well-
I know what you're talking about.
Okay.
I understand where you're coming from, but I mean, just seeing this over and over, I guess, just throws me off.
Well, it's unsettling.
Yeah.
It's unsettling because, you know, we have our emotions.
Yes, yes.
So it shows us, it's pointing out to us our habitual tendency. And it points out what it is that we need to work on.
Mhm. I guess as long as we're in this human form, we're going to have all those habitual tendencies. That's,
We're going to have them if we allow ourselves to attach to them or have aversion to them, but we can transcend them.
right. Yeah.
What is the book you held up for Sandra?
That's the Gourmet Dorje text, the translation that all this comes from, that this Bardo Thodol translation comes from. This is the first, and so far as I know, the only complete English translation of the Bardo Thodol.
Hold it up for a minute.
Again, how old is this Bardo Thodol? I mean,
The
And
Bardo
was it-
Thodol,
yes.
it goes back to Pabas
Oh.
and Baba,
Yep. Yeah.
but it was discovered in the 15th century.
Right. I understand that. I think it came after the Egyptian Book of the Dead.
Oh yeah, well after that.
Yeah.
And that's why it was that's why he titled it or people titled it Evan Wentz did that. The first English translation, which was a partial translation, was dubbed the Tibetan Book of the Dead because people were already familiar with the Egyptian Book of the Dead.
Right. Yeah. I've got that
But-
one.
But that's not
Two.
the real translation name. Bardo Thodol means the great liberation by hearing in the intermediate states.
Okay.
So did you see it, Thomas?
Yes,
Yeah. So Gourmet Dorje is the translator.
no, I have that book. I just, when you kind of flashed it very quickly and had the name Dorje, I didn't relate to it.
Okay. All right. Well, there's not a lot of time tonight. Does anybody else have an important thing that you want to ask? A comment or something?
Lance,
Yes, sir.
I wanted to say something about this skull full of blood.
Yes.
I, I'm originally a Catholic, and one of the things that they talk about is not drinking blood, because this is some kind of a, I don't know what it is.
Unless you're taking communion, then you drink the blood, right?
No, you drink the wine.
Well, isn't that supposed to be the blood
And
of Christ?
Some of us hold the container a little longer than others.
But isn't that symbolic supposed to be the blood of Christ?
Yes,
And the wafer is his body?
correct.
Yeah. I
But
was there. I know.
that's their transition over into that. They're not that.
Who's not that?
The wine and the wafer. The wine is wine and the wafer is a wafer.
Well, I'm not gonna
Until-
comment on that. I don't know.
until it gets.
So what's the
until
point? Wait a minute. So what's the point?
Oh, well, the point is that in a certain certain books of the Bible talk about not drinking blood because I don't know, I don't remember anymore whether it's, you know, some kind of hefty duty sin or what it is, but it's supposed to be not good for you to do. And I've been habituated to that. And with the speaking of the blood drinking people and that, it gets, it has, kind of fires me up about, wait a minute, you're not supposed to do that. That's a real no-no. So, and, you know.
Well, it's not real blood, right? Even
What's
when
that?
you're doing practices where we use wine or whatever.
No. What we're talking about here is blood. We're not talking about wine or anything like that. We're talking about actual physical.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Okay, I was wondering, I guess, if these things are just sort of culturally appropriated, like incorporated from, you know, Hindu or some other pre-existing, you know, deities that were there, and then they kind of get incorporated into the Buddhist faith, you know, and then the blood drinking might have been from animal sacrifice, which the Buddha didn't approve of, right? And then it gets changed. And so when we do practices, we use blood, we use wine, we don't use blood, you know. So I just thought all that. I don't know if any of that's accurate. Can you say something about that, Lance?
Well, number one, it's all symbolic. You're not actually eating blood or drinking blood and eating the offal and all that kind of stuff, but there is symbolism that is built into the practices that I think comes from the indigenous Tibetan shamanistic culture. And it was a way of being able to, Padmasambhava, being able to have the Buddhism assimilate in with the present culture that was in Tibet. A lot of the iconography comes from Tibet, from the shamanistic, from the Bund tradition. It wasn't the Indian tradition. So this whole, wrathful Vajrayana, although it was taught by the Buddha in India, but it really took hold when it went to Tibet, and it took this form or these many forms, because that was the way in which Padmasambhava had the wisdom to be able to bring many of the Tibetan people into together. It was a uniting way of bringing people together. But again, and some of the Bund tradition had sacrifice in it. And the Buddha and the Buddhists, banned that. There's no sacrifice like that in the Buddhism. So I think it's a cultural thing, and it's symbolic, and that's how I look at it. And when you get into the other practices, when you get into Chakrasamvara, with that practice, I'm very familiar with. I do it every day, and that is the highest of the wrathful deities, of all these Haruka class deities and so on. And all these references are in the Chakrasamvara practice.
So let's do dedication.
I beg your pardon?
So let's do dedication.
Does anybody else have anything else you want to bring up? Okay, then let me read this, please. Page 211 in the book, in the Bardo Thodol book. Alma Ahom. May the fields of the five elements not rise up as a hostile force. May I see them as the fields of the five Buddhas. May the elements of space not arise as a hostile force. May I see them as the field of the blue Buddha. May the elements of water not arise as a hostile force. May I see them as the field of the white Buddha. May the elements of earth not arise as a hostile force. May I see them as the field of the yellow Buddha. May the elements of fire not arise as a hostile force. May I see them as the field of the red Buddha. May the elements of wind not arise as a hostile force. May I see them as the field of the green Buddha. May the awesome sounds, lights, and rays not arise as a hostile force. May I see them as the infinite fields, of the peaceful and wrathful deities. May the rainbow-colored elements not rise up as a hostile force. May I see them as the field of the manifold Buddhas. May I recognize all sounds as my own sounds. May I recognize all lights as my own lights. May I recognize all rays as my own rays. May I spontaneously recognize the characteristics of the intermediate states. May the fields of the three Buddha bodies be manifest. Samaya. So now I'll screen share, and we'll do this prayer of the brief prayer of sorry. The brief prayer to be reborn in the blissful pure land of Dewachen. E Maho. In the center is the marvelous Buddha Amitabha of boundless light. On the right side is Avalokiteshvara, the Lord of great compassion. On the left is Vajrapani, the Lord of powerful means. All are surrounded by limitless Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Immeasurable peace and happiness is the blissful pure land of Dewachen. When I and all beings pass from samsara, may we be born in Dewachen without taking samsaric rebirth. May I have the blessing of meeting Amitabha face to face. By the power and blessings of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions, may I attain this aspiration without hindrance. Teata Pensadriva Avobodhanaya Soha. Bodhicitta, the excellent and precious mind. Where it is unborn, may it arise. Where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. By this virtue, may I achieve all knowingness, by defeating all enemies' confusion. May all who travel on the waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death cross the ocean of suffering. As Manjushri, the warrior, realized the ultimate state, and as did Samantabhadra, I will follow in their path and fully dedicate all the merit for all sentient beings. Om Mani Padme Hum Shri. 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 Om Mani Padme Hum. 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 Om Mani Padme Hum Shri. Om Hum. Om Hum. Om Hum. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones for the benefit of all sentient beings. Thank you.
Thank you, Lance.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Have a good night.
All right. See y'all next week.
Thank you, Lance.
Thank you, Lance.
Thank you.
Thank
Welcome.
you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
friends.
Thanks, Lance.
You're welcome.
Thanks, everyone.